sort of this idea of sort of the transient states between mortality and immortality. Just sort of really looking at ritualistic practices that deal with this. It could be celebratory, it could be quite sorrowful and quite like remorse, really. I think most of the artists in the exhibition have sort of played on this theme, either placing themselves in the work as, the artist as a godlike figure. So someone like Elsa Jo, she puts herself in a lot of situations that deal with sort of shamanistic practice. So she's like the shaman in her photographs, even though she is an artist and not a shaman. So it's that sort of play between those, really. Grace Morgan Pardo is really interested in Afro-symmetric religious practices. So she's more interested in how, say, an object represents a god or a symbol. And she's going to be doing a performance about binding spells on the preview evening. But I mean, she's not really going to cast any spells, but just kind of explore that and see how people invest in such beliefs. I just really sort of feel like a lot of the works in the exhibition really sort of make you as a person consider your mortality or your beliefs, really, and how you sort of see yourself, if you believe in things like that, really. You sort of think, okay, if we sort of get into that situation, what would be left behind? And that's literally what Ubi Sunt means, really. It's sort of like looking at the things that are left behind.
Sacrifice death for this. And if there is any life after death, you will be there. And then it will be here and now. And once you know how to live here and now, you will be able to live there too.
My name is Alison Huddy, and my works are these two here, Totem 1 and Totem 2, and I've done a series of multiples for this exhibition called Amulets, and they're hanging here. I suppose I would call them assemblages. They are roe deer skulls that have been mounted on plaques that I made and varnished, and then they've been embellished with feathers and skulls carved from bone and stone and paint. The amulets are cases which I found at a market in Bangkok, and they're filled with objects that I've found on the banks of the Thames and in my local park, and my own hair and twine, and they're meant to be a protecting charm, so I've kind of tried to make them look like a little magical object that would protect you from evil. I think a lot of my work is about enchantment and wildness. I think spirituality and nature are kind of big themes that I like to, meditate on and try and find a way to visually express that. Well, the themes of the exhibition are mortality and the transience of life, and I guess the idea behind them is that they would be like the relics of a kind of lost society or an unknown culture, and I think I've created them, but they could easily be authentic, and I think that kind of calls to mind the idea of worship throughout the ages and how sort of every people throughout the ages have had something that they worshipped.
And thus, as history has proved, love is eternal. It has been the strongest motivation for human actions throughout centuries. Love is stronger than life. It reaches beyond the dark shadow of death.
My name is Grace Morgan Pardo, and this piece is called Action de Grâce, Coup de Grâce. This piece draws on Haitian voodoo and Mexican Santeria and Brazilian candomblé and umbanda. It's a ceremony in which I have opened the crossroads into the world of the dead and invoked different spirits, which in Haitian voodoo are called loas. I've made offerings to these gods and casted evil out of the space in this ritual. And to me, these religions and these practices are really fascinating for a number of reasons. It's not a spell. Spell is a funny word. What I did here was open, like, you know, what you could call it a ritual. I did a ritual. It's not an entire ceremony. It's an entire ritual. I opened a crossroad, like, you know, I did certain actions. And of course, I do this in a kind of aesthetic level. I'm just an artist doing these things. And I think that in a way that spiritual leaders and artists are kind of similar in a way, the way that they make you see the world in a different way. And also they make objects and they imbue those objects with the kind of like super worldly significance. They splash paint on a canvas and all of a sudden it's worth, you know, the same amount that it would cost to save an entire like continent from famine. The amount of value, both monetary and significance, culturally and in so many ways. Contributing to knowledge in the same way that so I'm talking about art, and then in the same way in religion, an object like the Bible or the Holy Grail, what have you, relics, like these objects are invaluable to the people who believe in that religion. And so in that way I see both spirit, religion and art and spiritual leaders and artists kind of quite similar, makers of ritual objects, where art objects are kind of like ritual objects as well.
Down through the centuries, the notion that life is wrapped in a dream has been a pervasive theme of philosophers and poets. So doesn't it make sense that death too would be wrapped in dream? That after death your conscious life would continue in what might be called a dream body? It would be the same dream body you experience in your everyday dream life, except that in the post-mortal state you could never again wake up, never again return to your physical body.
My name's Sophia Shulkon, and the piece that I've got in the Ubi Sunt show is called Shallow Amongst His Earthy Hide. Well, this piece was basically created as a transformational piece. For me, it was working from a place of real sorrow and my experience with death in my life, which happened many years ago. So I really wanted to explore that vulnerable side of self and create from it to create power. So it's really a dualistic piece about the power within softness. I kind of had building blocks when I was working, and I was basically wanting to create something symbolic. So I created quite a piece of scale. They're quite big, they're quite affronting, with a face in the middle that was created from a horse. And this horse represented the fallen father. And the horse itself has quite a lot of symbolism and goes back to shamanic practice, and also has a long withstanding relationship within art. And so for me, using a piece of dead creature to represent the dead father was quite a powerful experience to work with. And then I was also working with a live model, and the piece has ended up that the creature that was actually dead looks alive and very vivid, and the female form that represented myself actually looks quite angelic or ghost-like. So it's kind of this dualistic feel where the creature that was dead is alive, and the human form that was alive kind of looks quite dead. So it just throws up these questions of where is the power, who are we as humans, where do we go when we die. You know, mourning and loss and death is such a private thing, but it's such a public experience because everybody in this room will experience loss at some point in their life, and we will all die eventually, yet it's something that's very, very secret. So for me, it was kind of challenging that as well, and taking my mourning process and exposing it to encourage a dialogue about death and about loss, and really to create something beautiful, powerful and strong from the experience and the legacy that was left to me by my father. So I guess that's how it relates to Ubi Sant, because the saying Ubi Sant, what is left after those who pass. And for me, this experience of creating this work has begun a creative legacy. So yeah, that's where it sits with me with Ubi Sant.
The space it's a really special space. It's had its own sort of transient moments in time as well, being an asylum, a place where people can come and seek refuge, and a chapel, and today it's a gallery. So I think the history of the actual space is interesting, tying into the themes of the exhibition. So the exhibition opens on Friday 29th of July and runs for 3 weeks, Thursday to Saturday, Sunday. And drinks are sponsored by Bernard Absinthe.
No, it's fine. There's no fight. Just try to let go. Come on. Just let it go. Just let it go.
Let me fall safe.